my lovely rewilders. How are you all doing? It's still hot here in Spain. In fact, about 15 minutes ago, I was sitting on the sofa going, oh God, I'm so exhausted, and think, oh shit, I have to go live. And it's a pleasure too. So here I am. God, it's hot. Anyway, I'm going to stop saying that because, yeah, because it's boring. Okay, so like I say, welcome to this week's Field Note Live. And I've been talking and sharing with you this week everything about balance, and particularly about the idea that balance is discovered and not taught. And it all started with a photograph that made me stop. It really affected me when I saw it. And it is the one which I think you might have all seen by now, if you've been following the week, and it's there in the group for you to go back and have a look at if you haven't. And it shows a horse with their tail attached to the lead rope, and the lead rope is then clipped to the bit, and it's to influence the canter lead and the balance and the bend and everything that goes with that. Now, the photograph itself is not what today's conversation is about. It simply made me ask a question when I saw it that made me feel that it needed a wider conversation. When we are looking for something, what was the moment that made us think that it was a good idea to create mechanical solutions in educating the answer to the question that we were asking? Because for me, balance has never been something that you put onto a horse. They're born with balance. So when we are influencing the horse's body, they're much more able to lean into what balance should feel for them if it is something we allow them to discover. And I think that is a really important distinction, and particularly when we're having our dialogues, the dialogues with our horses that specifically are aimed at improving something about the natural ability of the horse that allows them to use their bodies in a way that creates comfort when we are there to influence it, whether that be riding. I mean, it includes in-hand work as well, to be fair. Anything that we do that influences their balance, their bend, their ability to understand their bodies in the moment. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about why we do this, why we use manipulation over education. Now, I don't believe that most people wake up in the morning wanting to force a horse. I have to think that to remain sane. I think most people genuinely want to help. But somewhere along the line, our attention has shifted. Instead of becoming curious and fascinated by how horses learn, we have become indulgent with the outcome. Whether it be the canter lead, the outline, the movement, the transition, the collection, we become so focused on the finished picture that we forget that the picture is simply the end of a learning process. And that's where I think we sometimes lose our way. This week, I have been watching my own horses, not coaching them, just watching them. And, you know, the heat that we're experiencing now really allows for those important breaks. And one thing that really strikes me every single time that I give into nature's momentary sabbaticals is how much they learn without anyone organising them. If you watch a youngster negotiate rough ground, or watch two horses playing, which my two stallions are constantly doing, or like the other day when I mentioned earlier in the week when Parker was spectacularly rolling, what happens after that? Nobody tells them where to put their feet. Nobody explains how to regain their balance. Nobody adjusts their shoulders. They discover it within the moment. They're in tune with their bodies. They know where their feet are. They know where their bodies are. And they know the combination of the two. And it's not because they're left alone, because life gives them opportunities to solve problems. So that for me is education. Our land here is not flat. We're on terraces, we're on rough ground, we're in a forest, we have trees. When they're running around doing hulis, they have to navigate and shift leads and avoid obstacles all the time. That is an education. I rely on that to help me when it comes to the conversation that I would like with them. But don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that I shouldn't help my horses or that you shouldn't help your horses. Of course we should. They need nurturing within our domestic environment. We should condition them thoughtfully. Depending on what that final picture we have in our minds, and that will depend on the life you and your horses have together, what discipline you're following, how those conversations go. We need to develop strength. We need to improve coordination. We need to choose exercises that prepare them for what comes next within that life we have with them. That's part of good horsemanship. But there is a difference between helping a horse become capable and replacing the horse's learning with our control. And that distinction matters, because one creates understanding and the other creates dependency. One of the comments this week really made me smile, and it was comparing learning to a child learning to read. You don't read a book before you have learnt your alphabet. You build one piece at a time. And I thought that was such a lovely way of putting it, and one analogy that I have also used in the past. And I know that's exactly what our horses are doing. They're learning in layers. They're learning their letters first. And maybe our job isn't to rush ahead to the final chapter and hand them Shakespeare. And maybe it's simply to make sure that the next letter makes sense so that they can build a paragraph or build a sentence first, to build a paragraph, to build a short story, to build a masterpiece. So the question that I've carried with me all this week is not, how do I make my horse balanced? It's, what What does my horse still need in order to discover balance? And those to me feel like completely different questions. One is looking for techniques, while the other is looking for understanding. It is encouraging knowledge. It's encouraging seeking. It's the difference between what can I do and what does my horse need. And that is a whole foundational thread that runs through horsemanship from nature. It's always lived within that second question, because that's where nature lives. That's where rewilding lives. One of you also wrote something that I thought summed up this week beautifully. So I am going to share that with you here. And that is, they said, our job isn't to create balance. It's to create the conditions where balance becomes possible. And I could not agree more. Because I think that's true of balance. It's true of confidence, it's true of trust, it's true of connection. We don't manufacture those things. We can't and succeed, truly succeed. We nurture the conditions where they can grow, where they can succeed. So thank you for another week of thoughtful connections, thoughtful responses and dialogues. And if you've missed any of this week's content, you'll find the Field Notes in Motion episode on YouTube. Please join me there because a lot goes in. And there is a companion essay on Substack, which goes into a lot more depth. And of course you have all the posts and reels and stuff on social media. So what I would love to know is, what has your horse taught you this week, thinking about what we have shared? Let me know in the comments. It would be nice to hear. So until next time, I need another shower. Keep noticing. Take care. Bye.